Gasoline is proudly brought to you by Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts, and the following sponsors. I'm Michael Curson, producer, creator of Gasoline. Hope you enjoy.
Welcome back to Gasoline viewers. We've got a great episode in store for you this time round. Michael Curson, the producer, has found another barn find. We're on a rural property at an undisclosed location. The owner of this property has given us permission to check out what he calls a car collection in one of his old sheds. No one's been in there for a while, so I really look forward to seeing what it's like. And he won't tell us what the cars are either. So I'm excited to see what we find this time round. It's pretty wet and damp down here. I've got the overalls on, I'm ready to get down and dirty, and I've got some directions, which the owner's given us here, to find out where these cars are. So let's get into it and check these cars out. I think this is it. Let's get in there and check it out. This looks like the shed. It's a huge shed. Yep, there's cars in here. Not even locked. Wow. That's more than just a car collection. This joint's full of muscle cars. Let's check them out. Unreal. Well, when the owner said he had a car collection, I had no idea that he was talking about a collection like this. This massive chook shed here is chock-a-block full of muscle cars. I've had a look around, I reckon there'd be between 90 and 100 very desirable cars here. This guy knew what he was buying. I've got a lot of ground here to cover, so I'm going to try and do as much as I can for you on as many cars as I can cover. This car here caught my eye first, and this is a very important car too, the 1967 Xr Gt Falcon. The reason it's important, it's because this car started the muscle car scene in Australia. Before this thing came out, there was mainly 6-cylinder sedans and a lone AP6 V8 Valiant, which wasn't a bad thing, don't get me wrong, but they were nothing like these things. So Ford Australia decided they were going to come out and smash the opposition, and they did. And these cars were designed to do one thing, and that was to go out and win the Galahad 500, Bathurst. And guess what? They did. They came across the line in first place, and that changed history forever. They're an awesome piece of machinery, these things. They put a lot of effort into them. They called them Mustang bred. They had the legendary 289 Windsor under the hood. They had a 4-speed heavy-duty manual trans and a heavy-duty rear end. The other unique thing with these Xr Gt Falcons too is you could get them in one colour only, GT Gold. There was a small batch of Galahad Silver GT Falcons that came out for the Galahad Cigarette Company for the promotion of Bathurst. Other than that, it had to be gold. And after the XR came the XT GT. Now, leading GT Ford expert David Frake from GT Ford Performance tells me the XT GT was one of the best GT Falcons to drive out of the whole GT Falcon range. I know that might sound hard to believe. You've got your legendary GT Phase 3s and all the rest of it, but he reckons this was the most refined car to drive out of the whole lot. Its little 230 horsepower 302 Windsor was a beautiful upgrade. They had more appointments in the interior. They were just upgraded in certain areas to make the whole car drive a little bit better than the more raw Xr GT. Now, unfortunately, the XT GT didn't share the same success at Bathurst that the Xr GT did. The Ford factory team were doing extremely well, but they got a hole in the radiator. The car popped a head gasket, and unfortunately the race was over for them. Up until that point, they were doing extremely well and looking very promising for the win. Don't forget, viewers, to look up the all-new Shannons Club. Shannons Club is a huge site. It's like a hub for enthusiasts. You jump on there, you can start your own garage, put pictures of your cars up there, stories of your cars, videos, you name it. You'll see people like myself on there, Jim Richards, click on our garages and check out some of our machines and some of our past machines. It's an incredible site, it's growing every day, so get onto it and have a ball. And then, of course, there's the early Holden Monaros, GM's answer to Ford. And they came out all guns blazing too, using the almighty small block Chevy, the HK 327, which also had Bathurst success, right through to this HT 350 Monaro here. They won Bathurst with Colin Bond at the wheel, with the newcomer at that time, Peter Brock, coming third behind the wheel of the next Holden Monaro. They're a great thing. The 350 cubic inch small block Chevy in these HTs, the Muncie gearbox, the 12-bolt rear end. They were tough as nails and mighty fast and had a beautiful body style as well. They're an extremely desirable car in this age, very rare to find a good one in good nick. This car here is surprisingly in very good condition bodily-wise from what I can see. It's not hanging out with rust considering it's very close to the elements in this shed. Well, there's definitely no shortage of early Monaros here, that's for sure, with this Xg 350 Monaro. The Xg 350 was really just a bit of an updated or facelifted version of the HT 350 Monaro. Didn't really have any Bathurst heritage because this was the XU1's day, of course, but still a fantastic car and very sought after. I've got to say the 350 small block was a great choice for these cars because they were very, very tough. As anyone knows, it's very hard to kill a small block Chevy. You can rev the daylights out of those things, make fantastic power, and they just keep on going. Now, whilst the majority of these 350 Monaros in the early vintage came out with manual transmissions, believe it or not, some did actually come out with a Power Glide automatic transmission option. I can tell you for a fact, my brother-in-law actually owned one, and that car was legit. We've even got an advert in a magazine that proves it. The XW Falcon GT, an interesting car for sure. At your standard XW GT models, you also had your GT HO models. The early Phase 1 or HO, as it may have been called by some, was an interesting car too. It had a hot 351 Windsor, straight out of the Ford Performance Parts catalogue out of the US in the day, ordered by none other than Al Turner, who was heading the race teams in that day and age. The little 351 Windsor would go forever and a day without failure, and they'd perform like you wouldn't believe. Excellent torque out of corners, rev the daylights out of night and day, they just go and go and go. The Phase 2 GTHO, of course, was a different story. They had a big, angry 351 Cleveland and a big camshaft. All the gear, they made awesome power, and they were a bit of a pig of a thing to drive too, which added to the excitement. That's some great racing success, but they were a little bit fragile in the early days and did blow up on the odd occasion. Either way, I reckon the XW is a fantastic thing. Here's a car that's high on my agenda when it comes to muscle cars in the Holden scene. This HQ GTS 350 two-door Monaro. A great looking car. Yes, no racing heritage, but hey, who cares? They're a sensational looking piece of machinery. Holden put millions of dollars into the HQ Holden range. They did a fantastic job. I reckon these things are probably one of the best looking body styles that GM ever did in those early years. A great looking car. They only had a low compression 350 engine in them, so they were no groundbreaking car as far as performance goes. But the 4-speed manual and 10-bolt rear end, they're a pretty stout piece of machinery. Now this car here's an automatic version, not the more sought after manual, but don't worry, I'd still have this thing in a millisecond. Remember years ago you could buy something like this for about 3 or 4 grand back in the 80s? Those days are long gone. Try about 60 or 70 grand for a pristine example now. The good days are over. Even the HQ 4-door for its day was quite an attractive looking car. This HQ SS is quite a rare vehicle, with its 4-speed manual and 253 V8 option, a very sought after car even today. There's only one downside with HQ Holdens, and that getting parts for them these days is very, very tough, partly due to the HQ Holden Racing series. So many of those things were smashed and crashed and panels then replaced, it just dried up and exhausted the supply. Gotta love these Xr Gt Falcon coupes. They're a tough looking piece of machinery, aren't they? A great looking rear end too, with heaps of room for great big fat rubber. That's why they look so fantastic on the racetrack in their day. I love the XA 4-door too, don't get me wrong, a great looking car. Look, the XY GT Falcon have probably been the most popular over the years, but the XAs are now starting to come into their own. And it was said that the Xr Gt Falcon was the first truly all-Australian designed GT Falcon, without all that US input that the earlier models have. And this is interesting too, comparing the XY GT to the Xr Gt performance in standard condition. The Xr Gt was about 1 second faster, up to 100 mile per hour. Engine power was almost very similar. All I can put that down to is that they're a little bit more aerodynamic. They slipped through the air a bit better, and it made all that difference at higher speeds. Great looking car. The XU1 Tirana. Now what a giant killer these things were. They were the brainchild of Harry Firth, the Fox, the mastermind of Holden dealer team, HDT. He had an idea. They'd been running the small block Chevy powered Monaros with some fairly good success, but he wanted to go to something a little bit different. He wanted a smaller, more nimble car, a 6-cylinder powered car, a car that stopped, a car that handled, a car that was economical for those long distance races, a car that could go around the outside of those big V8s in all sorts of situations. So this is what they came up with, starting with the LC GTR XU1. Hot little 186 with a hot camshaft, triple carbs, special exhaust headers, you name it, it had it. And they were a very brisk machine. But it wasn't until the LJ GTR XU1 till they really started to shine. The evolution of that car was absolutely sensational. They came into their own. The LJ featured a very hot little 202 inline 6-cylinder engine, larger triple carbs. In fact, the 73 Bathurst edition had tubular headers, a larger camshaft, improved oiling system, and a whole host of goodies that really stuck it right to those V8 boys, especially the GTHO Phase 3 boys. I've got to be careful there. I know I do own an XY and I love those things, but I've got to say I've got a massive amount of respect for these LJ XU1s. Peter Brock proved that they were a giant killer by winning Bathurst against the mighty Alan Moffat. And that was no easy task, and that's an unforgettable moment in motor racing history. I've got to say, for all you Holden boys out there that think we do favour Fords, sorry about that, but we do love Holdens too. Michael Curson, the producer, actually owns an LJ GTR XU1. So don't worry, we love Holdens and Fords. And for that matter, any cars. back at Rocket Industries once again, so let's go inside and take a look around. We'll have a look at what I've found here, viewers. This awesome atomic MSD EFI system, self-tuning too. Even your old school muscle car can run a little bit of modern technology and take advantage of what's available in this day and age in the high performance world. This unit is self-tuning, so effectively you bolt it on the car, you cycle through on your hand controller here and put in some important inputs and specifications on your engine, and away you go. Things like cubic capacity, number of cylinders, and camshaft type. That'll get the thing fired up and going. It's got full ignition and fuel control. And for a limited time, it actually comes with this digital MSD 6A ignition box too. It comes with virtually everything you need, from high pressure fuel hose, fuel filter, high volume fuel pump, complete wiring loom. This baby takes around about 3 hours on average to get the car up and running to turnkey stage. It's a really interesting unit too. It's backwards compatible with your 4-barrel Holley applications. As you can see, these linkages here are identical to the carb, so everything bolts straight on, away you go. Even your air filter will bolt onto this unit. If you have a look here, here's the ECU. The brain of it is all contained within this throttle body here. You've got 4 injectors, high volume, 2 per side. You've got intake air temperature sensors. You've got MAP sensors, so manifold absolute pressure is measured. So for wide open throttle application or part throttle, it knows what's going on. This brain can make sure this baby is tuned to perfection and running sweet at all times. Drivability can be improved out of this world with EFI systems compared to the old carburetted system. Look, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with a carb in its place. It will do the job for most applications, but you can't beat a perfect amount of fuel and ignition going into that engine to get perfect drivability. It also has, speaking of ignition, ignition control as well. So you can get so much drivability in cold conditions, high performance conditions, fuel efficiency, all those things we want in today's day and age. Check this out too, an idle air control motor, just like your late model EFI engines run. Controls idle speed. Things like cold start. Fire this baby up, this will keep the RPM up for you with that big camshaft that's just lumping away so the engine doesn't stall. As soon as the engine gets up to operating temperature, this comes back down and controls the RPM at the normal idle speed. And check this thing out. This is what I find really interesting about this system here. This fuel pressure sensor here. It doesn't run a normal regulator like a normal EFI system runs. It actually controls the speed through voltage to the fuel pump through the brain, the ECU. So if the engine's at idle, it doesn't need all that fuel pressure. It pulls the pump speed back and delivers only the fuel required. Now the important thing for me is it actually comes with a 5-wire oxygen sensor. So basically this goes in your exhaust system and measures the amount of oxygen within the fuel. This will equate to perfect air-fuel ratios at all time in this self-tuning EFI system. Now this kit will support 525 horsepower out of the box, but there's also a fuel pump upgrade kit which will make it support 625 horsepower. And I reckon that's more than enough for most applications. For your free copy of the Rocket Industries and Aeroflow Performance Products catalogues, go to the Gasoline website and click on the link. With over 650 combined pages of performance parts and accessories, you're sure to find everything you need for your car.
You're watching Gasoline.
Now here's an interesting and rare piece of machinery, this Phase 5 Gt Falcon. They're a car that weren't actually developed and made by Ford. Done by another company called Phase Autos. And it all started here. A very enthusiastic designer that used to work at Ford by the name of Wayne Draper. He was a very keen designer and also a very keen motorsport enthusiast. When Ford decided to get out of motorsport and decided that they didn't want to race the Gt Falcon, they just chopped their whole motorsport program, Wayne Draper was a little bit upset. He had other ideas and secretly started penciling up this car. He worked with people like Murray Carter and others to help homologate the Gt Falcon for Group C. The rest is history. We all know what Dick Johnson did. The car was absolutely lightning fast and won race after race, even winning Bathurst. They used a lot of features off the Phase 5 Falcon on that Group C homologation car. So it was a credit to people like Wayne Draper. He actually formed a company with another partner called Phase Autos and produced a limited number of these cars so they could make it all happen. And sadly, I recently heard some bad news, and that was that Wayne Draper had actually passed away. It's a very sad day in motorsport and in the automotive industry when you hear things like that. I'd like to just say thanks very much, Wayne, for all the good things you did over the years to help car enthusiasts just like us. And remember, viewers, if you want to see past Gasoline episodes, go to shannons.com.au. Click on the Gasoline link and enjoy. And remember, this is a whole new season of Gasoline with new episodes every Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m, Australia-wide.
Gasoline is proudly brought to you by Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts, and the following sponsors. I'm Michael Curson, producer-creator of Gasoline. Hope you enjoy.